Today I'll be going over Chapter 5 of Nancy Rooks' book, Inside Graceland. Chapter 5 is titled Lisa Marie. Nancy says that among all the things that brought Elvis happiness, nothing compared to the joy he felt when his daughter Lisa Marie was born. Lisa Marie's arrival profoundly changed Elvis. It brought a new joy and warmth into his life. Her presence transformed the atmosphere at Graceland by brightening the entire household like sunshine filling a room. Some people initially doubted whether Elvis would handle the responsibilities of fatherhood well, but those concerns quickly proved unfounded. Nancy said she and everyone at Graceland were thrilled and excited about the arrival of a baby in the house, and she remembers the day that Priscilla went into labor. Dodger asked Priscilla, "Has your water broke yet?" Priscilla, sounding very nervous, said, "Yes, it just broke." Trying to calm any fears in Priscilla, Dodger said, "Everything is going to be okay, honey. I done been through this 5 times, and I promise you it will all be fine." Nancy says Priscilla went into the living room and sat on the couch waiting for Elvis patiently, while he and the guys grabbed the bags and suitcases they had packed for the hospital and loaded them into the car. Nancy writes, "I thought it was so sweet when Elvis came back inside. He made sure Priscilla was okay, then went into Dodger's room and kissed her on top of the head as she sat in her rocking chair near the door. He was so nervous that he got to talking to Dodger and she finally had to remind him about Priscilla. He kissed her again and she thanked him and then said, 'You better get that little girl to the hospital right now and be sure to drive safe.'" They walked out the front door where 2 cars were waiting. She says the second car was there in case the first car broke down, which she says would be highly unlikely given the types of cars he owned. They drove to the hospital, but almost the wrong one. Nancy was supposed to be done with work at 5 that day, but she stayed and waited for Elvis to come back with news of the baby. When he did come back, she says everyone practically mobbed him at the door where he announced Lisa Marie was born and that both baby and mother were doing well. Up to that point, they didn't know that Priscilla had a baby girl. Elvis thanked everyone and excitedly shared the details of the day's events. His enthusiasm was contagious, and those around him were eager to celebrate the moment with him. Elvis said to Dodger, "I love my little girl to death. We're going to have a boy next time." He was beaming and added, "We're going to have 20 children." Nancy told him, "Well, you've only got 19 more to go," and everyone laughed. Nancy writes, "Several weeks later, Priscilla and I were talking, and I happened to mention, teasingly, what Elvis had said about wanting 20 children. She laughed and replied, 'Well, he'll be the one to have them because I'm not having any more.'" Before Nancy left Graceland the day Lisa was born, she asked Elvis if she could fix him something to eat, thinking he had to be hungry. He told her, "Thanks, Nancy, but I'm too excited to eat anything right now." So she left home. Several days passed before Elvis and Priscilla brought baby Lisa home. Since Nancy was off work that day, she eagerly looked forward to returning the next day so she could finally see the baby. At Graceland the next day, Nancy hurriedly did what she needed to do, and then she went upstairs. Lisa was asleep in a small bassinet in the center of the room, and Nancy saw how beautiful she looked with a full head of dark hair. She slept peacefully while Nancy quietly entered. Nancy looked at this little angel, and she knew things were about to change at Graceland. Nancy says the back corner bedroom, which had once been used as a small conference room with a round table, was turned into the nursery. Elvis and Priscilla decorated it themselves in soft yellow and white. The nursery was furnished with dressers along 2 walls and a small bunk-style bed that could convert into a couch during the day. This daybed was intended for Lisa's babysitters to use while caring for her, and there was a chair against the wall between the bed and the bassinet. The daybed in the nursery had a custom yellow cover. Years later, after the bed was removed, Aunt Delta gave Nancy the cover, which she still keeps and treasures as one of her most prized possessions. Whenever she looks at it, she remembers baby Lisa crawling on it. Nancy writes, "Lisa was always so much fun to be around for Elvis. She truly became the joy of his life. Watching her grow up was such a treat for him, as well as the rest of us. They really enjoyed playing together. He would lay her on his stomach in bed and marvel for long periods at a time at how beautiful she was. As Lisa grew older, she loved sneaking up behind Elvis and tickling him unexpectedly. Hearing their laughter and squeals of delight from the next room was a joyful sound while Nancy worked there, and there were times she couldn't tell who was laughing the most, Elvis or Lisa." Nancy writes, "They also loved to reverse roles. Lisa would pretend to be the mommy, and Elvis would let her feed him as they sat on his massive bed. It was very cute to watch, although I did clean up a number of food messes on that bed over the years. As Lisa grew up, we encountered the same problems with her that any other family faces, and that naturally included food. Just like her father, there were foods that she liked as well as those she didn't. She loved macaroni and cheese, creamed potatoes, fried chicken, well done hamburgers, french fries, and toast with grape jelly. Lisa did not like milk and instead would ask for Pepsi or orange juice. The only way they could get her to drink milk was when they would add chocolate syrup to it. And like her dad, Lisa loved sweets. She would beg the maids to make her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with vanilla ice cream. The staff tried to limit Lisa's sweets, especially when she was young, but as Lisa got older, she would sometimes claim, "Mom said I could have some cake." But Priscilla always supported the staff when they refused. Elvis, however, happily spoiled her and rarely denied her treats. One of Lisa's favorite treats was having her meal served in her round, hamburger-style bed. Elvis had owned a similar bed in his dressing room, and since Lisa loved playing on it, he bought one just like it for her bedroom. But Lisa's was nicer than the original bed. It had a built-in radio and TV and steps leading up to it. It also had a mirror built into the canopy. Lisa would lay back in bed and watch herself as she ate. Nancy writes, "She was always a very independent person. One of the things that would get her riled up, even at an early age, was when she thought we were trying to baby her. She couldn't stand that from anyone. She would scream out, 'Don't call me a baby. I'm not a baby.' She also did not like being touched or petted in any way. Trying to comb her hair when she was younger could sometimes be a real challenge." Lisa also loved makeup and wearing her mother's and Aunt Delta's clothes around the house. Nancy has many memories of Lisa walking around the house in oversized dresses and heels. While Priscilla initially found Lisa's curiosity charming, it caused trouble one day when Lisa got into her makeup kit and ruined nearly every tube of lipstick. Nancy then spent several hours cleaning lipstick and rouge off Priscilla's vanity. Lisa loved going to the swimming pool. Nancy and Aunt Delta would spend hours at the side of the pool acting as lifeguards. Aunt Delta could swim, but Nancy couldn't, so she would just sit at the shallow end with her feet in the water while Aunt Delta sat next to her. Nancy writes, "I remember one day Lisa was enjoying herself in the middle of the pool, and Aunt Delta told me she needed to go and check on something and that she'd be right back. She'd only been gone a few minutes when Lisa dove down to the bottom of the deep end of the pool. I watched with mounting alarm as she stayed down there for what seemed like an eternity. Becoming concerned that something had happened to her and that I was going to have to somehow overcome my fear of the water and go in after her, I began screaming, 'Lisa, are you okay, honey?' Not getting a response from her, I screamed louder, then louder still when, just as I was getting ready to jump in after her, she came popping out of the water with a big grin on her face, yelling, 'I heard you all along. I was just seeing how long I could hold my breath.' I aged 5 years that day." Despite her mischievous side, Lisa was growing into a sweet and affectionate child. Even with the special status she had as Elvis's daughter, she showed genuine affection toward those around her, especially Minnie May. She'd go into the bedroom and say, "How are you today, Grandma?" If Minnie May would answer, "I'm not doing so well today, sweetie," Lisa would say, "Oh, I'm sorry." Nancy writes, that affection also carried through to Vernon, who she called Papa. They had a very warm and close relationship as well. Vernon would always take time out to share a warm smile and a hug whenever she came around. So that's so interesting because in Lisa's book, she says that she and Vernon were not close at all, and she found him intimidating. Nancy says, as for Aunt Delta, Lisa told Nancy once, "I like Aunt Delta, but she cusses too much." Nancy says after Elvis died, Lisa often did not want to spend the night at Graceland when she visited Memphis. Instead, she usually stayed at her cousin Patsy's house for several different reasons. Nancy writes, "For one, she didn't feel as comfortable around Aunt Delta as she did some of the other members of the family. Even though they were related, Aunt Delta didn't have that warm and caring way about her like some of the other family members did." Another reason was that Lisa was once frightened after spending the night in Aunt Delta's room with a friend while Aunt Delta was away. In the middle of the night, they were awakened by strange noises coming from outside the bedroom window, which scared them. It was never determined whether they were just hearing things or if it was real, but in any case, it left enough of an impact on Lisa that she didn't like staying at the house after that. Nancy says, "I also think that she did not feel comfortable in the house after Elvis died. It was such a shame because she had enjoyed it so much growing up there. I noticed a change in her, however, whenever she came to the house after his passing. The only time I remember her going upstairs was one time, several years after he had died, when she asked me to go up to his bedroom with her. She got very quiet as we entered the room and stopped. looked around for a few minutes, and then went over and got a black and white ball cap from his closet and walked out of the room with it. I think that just knowing that her father had died up there was too much for her. I guess it would be for most children her age. Nancy continues. One day, Lisa came running into the house, crying. I asked her what was wrong, but she wouldn't tell me. Aunt Delta walked into the room, but Lisa would not come near her. We finally called Patsy to come in and talk to her to try and find out what was bothering her. Patsy told me later that Lisa had overheard Aunt Delta saying some unflattering things about how Priscilla was talking about opening Graceland to the public. Apparently, Aunt Delta had said that meant Priscilla didn't care about Aunt Delta and Dodger, and because of that, had talked harshly about Priscilla. They found out later that Lisa had confronted Aunt Delta, and they got into an argument with Lisa telling her, "You don't like anybody, you just cuss them out behind their back." But within a few days, the incident was forgotten and things returned to normal. Nancy says one of Lisa's favorite activities was driving around the Graceland grounds in a small blue golf cart Elvis had specially made for her, and it even had Lisa Marie painted on the side. Lisa drove the golf cart very fast around Graceland, sometimes with friends on board, racing along the paths and taking sharp turns, and sometimes even lifting onto two wheels. Nancy says, "You took your life in your hands sometimes, just walking around the grounds while she was on her golf cart." One day, Nancy saw Lisa drive her golf cart over to the side wall where a fan was peeking over. Lisa confidently told the person that they were not supposed to be there. The fan asked, "Who are you?" Lisa stood tall on the golf cart and yelled, "I own this place. It's all mine. That's who I am." Then she drove off as Nancy scrambled to call security. Nancy says, this was her house, and like her daddy, she was going to defend it if she had to. A golf cart incident led to one of Lisa's nurses being fired when Lisa was much younger. Nancy writes, the nurse, a lady from Germany, had recently been hired by Priscilla to watch Lisa. She had just put Lisa down for a nap and, having gone out back for a break, apparently saw one of Elvis's golf carts sitting there and had decided to take it for a spin. Having apparently never driven a golf cart before, she was not familiar with how to control it. She drove it around the side driveway to the front of the house, down the winding driveway, and right into the front rock wall just to the left of the guard shack. She had to be taken to the hospital for some minor injuries and was promptly fired by Priscilla when she got back to the house. We were all so thankful that she had not had little Lisa with her at the time. The new nurse didn't last long either. She was elderly and got tired easily, so she often went home early, which left Aunt Delta and Nancy to watch over Lisa. But those times allowed them to sit on Lisa's daybed and talk through the evening about anything and everything while waiting for Lisa to fall asleep. Delta once told her, "I don't really know how to watch over a baby. I never had one of my own." And Delta also said that she felt more comfortable with her little dog Edmund, and she laughed when she told Nancy, "Maybe I like dogs better than people because they don't talk back like people do." Nancy writes, like all young people, Lisa would occasionally get bored around the house. When she was younger, she and a friend of hers would play a game with the telephone that they had made up. They would put random numbers together to make up a phone number and then dial that number. They would keep doing that until they got a number that answered. Once they got someone on the phone, they would try to engage them in some nonsensical conversation. The routines about Prince Albert in a can, or "Is your house on the bus line?" The kind of pranks we all grew up with. Of course, it was all done as harmless fun. I often wondered as I listened to their conversations what the person on the other end of the line would have thought had they known they were getting prank calls from the daughter of Elvis Presley. I also wondered what Elvis would have said had he found out what they were doing. But like so many other things, that remained a secret between me and Lisa. Nancy says that as a young child, Lisa had an endearing charm, and many of the things she did seemed cute. Like most children, she could make a mess very quickly, and Nancy often found her covered in something or with it spread across the floor. One day she found Lisa with makeup smeared all over her face and, without thinking, said, "Lord have mercy, child." Over the next several weeks, Nancy would hear Lisa in the next room yelling in her little voice, "Lord have mercy, child." She says Lisa loved watching Sesame Street and imitating Big Bird and Bert and Ernie. The staff who watched Lisa grow up felt deeply invested in her life, almost as if she were their own child. They shared in both the joyful and difficult moments, caring for her not just out of duty, but out of true, genuine love. When Lisa moved to California after her parents' divorce, it felt to the staff like losing a member of their own family. And when she later returned to visit, it felt like a loved one coming home. Nancy writes, even after she got married the first time and moved to Florida with her husband, Danny Keogh, We also felt a sense of responsibility toward her. Like all young married couples, she had occasional problems early in the marriage. I think she was truly in love with Danny, but after they moved to Florida, she began calling Graceland. I took several phone calls myself, only to find her crying on the other end of the line, asking to speak to Aunt Delta. At first, Aunt Delta was sympathetic and would take these calls. At some point, Aunt Delta began refusing to take Lisa's calls. Aunt Delta said, "I don't think that's really Lisa. Hang up." Nancy, who was still concerned about Lisa's well being, said, "But Mrs. Delta, what if she's hurt or really in trouble?" Aunt Delta would say, "Well, even if it is her, she'll find her way out of it." Nancy would have to tell Lisa that Aunt Delta was unavailable. Nancy believes that Aunt Delta was probably just thinking Lisa needed to learn how to resolve her issues on her own, but it made Nancy feel like she was put in the middle and she was not comfortable with that. Nancy says she often gets asked her opinion about Lisa's marriage to Michael Jackson. "Do you think they're really married?" Nancy would say, "Yes, they are definitely married." But she feels that Michael could never have been any type of father figure to Lisa's kids and that, quote, "it just wasn't in his heart." Nancy writes, "I believe that it was more a marriage of convenience and friendship than anything else. They did not need each other's money. Michael was a star in the limelight, just like Elvis had been. Their marriage only lasted 18 months. I was surprised it lasted that long. I was just glad that Michael never tried to use Lisa Marie for any bad reason. I don't think Elvis would have approved of that marriage. I believe that Lisa's first and only true love is Danny, the father of her 2 children. Then the world was surprised by the announcement that she had married Nicolas Cage, and that marriage was so short that it's not even worth talking about." Nancy expresses her hope that Lisa will eventually find true happiness and contentment in life. Despite Lisa's difficult experiences with failed marriages, she still holds on to the dream that one day Lisa will meet the right person. That's it for chapter 5. Stay tuned for chapter 6, which is titled, "Lord, Please Save My Boy." See you then.